Sam Pittman and Arkansas enter a huge year in 2025. And today we take a deep dive into the Arkansas Razorbacks to see one, how Sam Pittman can keep his job, but also how this team could potentially be a surprise team in the SEC. Last year was a 7-6 season. We obviously saw plenty of ups and downs, and Sam Pittman's seat, unfortunately, is seemingly only getting hotter by the minute. And this is, again, a team that I think has plenty of talent to surprise people. They bring in Bobby Petrino to run the offense, so that should be a really exciting addition. Travis Williams showed some really exciting signs as a coordinator in the last couple years, and this Arkansas defense has plenty of returning talent, but also a couple pieces that maybe you need to see develop. That being said, this is a group that should still be really exciting, and the transfer portal was kind to them. At least they were able to, I should say, attack the transfer portal and find really interesting pieces. Now, nobody's going to replace someone like Landon Jackson. Eric Gregory arguably might not be replaceable. Jaquindon Jackson is going to be tough, though the depth at this position, at the running back position, is in a pretty good place. And then you lose a couple wide receivers that I think hurt more than they might realize, but they're really high on a guy like Omega Blake. A lot of people are. I don't necessarily know if I see that, but you bring in Omega Blake from Charlotte, you bring in Courtney Crutchfield from Missouri, you bring in Cam Shanks from UAB, Jalen Brown from Florida State. You bring in talent that is hoping to make an impact. And even guys like Raylan Sharp, those are guys that could be really impactful transfers. Those are guys that could take a step and make your team tremendously better. And you're going to need someone to get open for Taylor Green. And maybe that's a tight end in Rohan Jones. That's another piece that we'll talk about here in a little bit. But I think overall, this team did a good job. This coaching staff identified talent in the portal that was going to help right away, and some other talent that maybe needs some time to develop, but is going to be a fun fit in this offense. And Petrino's offense is going to be explosive. It's going to be dynamic, and it all starts with Taylor Green. And Taylor Green, honestly, to me, is getting slept on. I know that there are some deficiencies in his game, and there's definitely things that he can do to get better. You know, the 15-9 touchdown to interception ratio is not great. You'd like to see that get improved. But this is a guy who has the tools to be electric. You know, he's 6'6", 224 pounds. He has a great frame that would get a lot of teams really excited at the next level. The NFL is going to like what he brings to the table in terms of traits, in terms of frame. And if he can find a way to improve this year, you're looking at a guy whose draft stock could skyrocket. Threw for over 3,100 yards last year. So it wasn't like he wasn't producing. It's just 15 touchdowns and 9 interceptions isn't going to get the job done. It's not going to get you where you need to be. And you need to improve that, plain and simple. And I think that's why you're excited that Petrino comes in. You feel like Taylor Green is going to be dynamic. And you also, we haven't even talked about his legs, 602 yards and 8 touchdowns as well. So that's over 3,700 yards and 23 touchdowns in 2024. And that number should get better. I think that if Arkansas wants to see improvement, they're going to have to see their quarterback be an absolute monster. And he's capable of doing that. He is definitely capable of making those plays and putting up those numbers. He just has to do it. He has to get settled in this offense, and there's plenty of talent around him to make those plays. So we'll see if that all works out. But you also have really exciting talent around him as well. You know, depth behind him is probably where you maybe have questions. KJ Jackson is relatively inexperienced. Grayson Wilson's a freshman, so you don't necessarily have the most experienced players on your team. So you're hoping that Taylor Green does stay healthy and does take that step, because if he does, this offense goes to new heights. And maybe you rely on a rushing attack a little bit more that should have plenty of depth. Braylon Russell entered the transfer portal before coming back. That was a nice return for them. Mike Washington Jr. is someone who, you know, started at Buffalo, goes to New Mexico State, lands at Arkansas, has a really big frame at 6'2", 223 pounds. They feel like he's in a good position to make a big impact. Russell comes in at 6'1", 238. So that's another nice piece to have. Behind them, though, is you have plenty of depth. You have Rodney Hill, you have Cam Settles, you bring back AJ Green from Oklahoma State. So you're feeling pretty good about where this team can go on the ground. You feel like you have good depth, you have good talent at the top, and that's going to bode well in Petrino's system, like we talked about before. Again, Bobby Petrino is a really good offensive mind. He has the ability to get his teams to play at a high level. And again, a lot of that has to do with the quarterback. The quarterback position is one to keep an eye on. And I think that if this team finds chemistry with each other, you're going to feel pretty good about where this offense is going in 2025. And Taylor Green will dictate a lot of that. They also have an offensive line that has plenty of exciting talent and plenty of new faces, but it's always going to start with Taylor Green and what he's able to do with this offense. And his wide receiver options are going to be relatively new, whether that's inexperienced or new faces from the portal. We talked about Omega Blake before, 24.8 yards per catch on a terrible Charlotte team. That's something to at least pay attention to. He only had 32 catches, but when you turn 32 catches and almost 800 yards and 9 touchdowns, people are going to pay attention. Over a quarter of his catches went for touchdowns. So you're hoping that that translates to the SEC, but doing it in the AAC versus doing it in the SEC are two completely different things. That being said, they're really excited about what he can do. Now, Ismail Cease, you're going to see a guy who could potentially take a step in his production. Playing for Stanford was a struggle last year, and you're hoping that maybe a new offense and a more explosive offense gives him more opportunities. Raylan Sharp's another really interesting piece on the smaller side at 5'9", 165 pounds, but he was fun to watch at Fresno State. 51 catches for 523 yards and 3 touchdowns. I think that he is a really interesting piece for this offense, and one that I think flies under the radar in terms of guys that could make a big impact. If not, maybe a guy like Cam Shanks is the guy that'll step up. The UAB transfer, 62 catches, 656 yards, and 6 touchdowns. Now, I think the hard part is some of these transfers, they played for some really bad teams. So they have to kind of learn how to win football games again. And they have to learn how to grind and compete in the SEC. So that's something to keep an eye on with this wide receiver position. CJ Brown had 5 catches last year. Monty Harrison only had 2. So those are 2 guys that could play more of a role, but we just don't know what we're going to get from them. Still young players that are learning, and they're going to learn a new system. Like we talked about before, they also bring in Jalen Brown from Florida State. You bring in Courtney Crutchfield from Missouri. Those 2 guys could be a part of the rotation as well. This is kind of a wide open group. It's kind of a wide open position. I think that Sharp and Blake are probably 2 solidified options for sure, but there are plenty of depth pieces. There are plenty of rotational pieces that will play a role as well. And getting open for Taylor Green is going to be a huge key. Yes, Taylor Green needs to be better in terms of his touchdown to interception ratio, but part of that's on your wide receivers. Part of that's on your tight ends. And if you're not getting the job done offensively, if you're not getting open, if you're not creating separation, this is going to be a long year. So that's a big X factor for this team. The passing attack must be really good. If the rushing attack, I think, should be solid, but if they can't do it, then the passing attack has to be better. And teams are just going to load the box if you can't throw the football, and they're probably going to send extra help to guard Taylor Green. So you have to find guys that can either stretch the field vertically, create some explosive plays in the short to intermediate routes. So you have the talent. It's just a matter of who's going to be that guy that steps up. Now, maybe the tight end position will do part of that as well. Rohan Jones didn't have the most production at Montana State, but he averaged 17.2 yards per catch. And for a tight end, that's really impressive. That's explosive, and that shows you that he's capable of making plays as well. So maybe if your wide receiver position isn't living up to expectations, then you turn to the tight end position. Jane Platt played in 6 games for Texas A&M. He's another guy that could be a big-time playmaker for this offense. Andreas Paskey also is back, 3 catches, 19 yards, but 2 of those catches went for touchdowns. So you're looking at who can be depth pieces. Now, Rohan Jones is a really good addition for this offense. I think he fits into Bobby Petrino's scheme really well, and it's just going to come down to who's going to be the go-to guy. Whether that's Omega Blake, whether that's Rohan Jones, we don't really know, but you have plenty of options. You just have to identify which one of them is actually going to be the go-to guy and who's going to step up and make those plays. Giving Taylor Green time to throw is also a big key. Now, I think Petrino has a lot of exciting ways to get the ball out of his hands quickly and let him make quick reads. But you also did a good job of bringing in talent from the transfer portal to protect him up front. And you added good depth as well. So even though you have starters, you brought in guys that are going to back up or potentially play as a rotational piece this year as well. You bring in Corey Robinson from Georgia Tech. 7 starts last year, but has 12 starts in his career, has 36 games of experience. Fernando Carmona comes back, a very experienced player at left guard, and Marion Harris comes in back to slide in to guard. Shaq McRoy is going to be at tackle at 6'8", 362 pounds. So that right side is going to be massive. You also bring in Caden Kittler from UCF, an experienced player who had a really good year for the Knights and gives you a center that knows what he's doing, understands how to get this offense going, and gives you an experienced player for Taylor Green to feel comfortable behind. That's a big one. I think we don't talk enough about the center quarterback relationship and how important that is to an offense's success, and especially in a new system with Bobby Petrino, in a system that, or really an offense that has multiple new starters. The quarterback center position has to be on the same page. And the center is almost, a lot of people say, another quarterback on the field, identifying opportunities, identifying coverage, blitzes, anything like that. Caden Kittler is going to be a pivotal piece in this offense. The depth is really good as well. You bring in Kavion Broussard from Ole Miss. You also bring in Marcus Dumerville from Maryland, also the former LSU transfer. So the tackle positions are in good places. You also have 2 guys that were in the starting lineup at one point with Kobe Branham and Brooks Edmondson. So you're in a pretty good place for those 2 guys to potentially start if something goes wrong. Same thing with Keyshawn Blackstock. You could put him at guard. You could put him at tackle. And you have a guy who a lot of people believe can play multiple positions, and that gives you good depth. So I think right now, this is a team with a pretty solid floor. I think that it's not too low where you're worried about what happens up front. It's just going to come down to how high is your ceiling? How high can you play, and what is the level of play that you're going to bring to the table? Because if you are taking it 2 teams up front, that's where this team gets really exciting. That's where Taylor Green gets to shine the most, is when his offensive line is doing a lot of great things up front and commanding the physicality and taking it to the other team. That's really where you're going to thrive. And this group, I think, has the ability to do that. They're also going to help a group in the defensive line that's going to be inexperienced, but needs to find ways to grow up quickly. Now, you do return Cameron Ball. That's a huge addition, both literally and figuratively. 6'5", 326 pounds, had 47 tackles last year, 4 tackles for loss, 1.5 sacks. Losing Eric Gregory hurts, but you have some interesting options around him that could step up. You look at Kevin Otis is a freshman that they're really excited about. David Oki is going to be coming in from Abilene Christian. I think that Danny Staley is going to be the guy who gets the opportunity right away next to him. And a lot of people are going to find exciting opportunities with Cameron Ball coming back. Cameron Ball is going to command a lot of attention up the middle, and that helps not only the other tackle next to him, but it's also going to help the edge players, the defensive ends. Charlie Collins is stepping into a new role, as is Quincy Rhodes, but Quincy Rhodes is a really interesting player on the edge as well. 15 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 1 sack last year. They're hoping that he can be even more disruptive than he was in 2024. And that means good things. Losing Landon Jackson is going to hurt. I don't think anybody is going to argue against that. And now it's just going to come down to who are the guys that can step up and make plays for them. You also bring in some transfers that if these guys can't get it done, you potentially have a solution for that. Justice Boone is someone that's looking to take a step forward coming in from Florida. Phillip Lee was very productive with Troy, but again, going from the Sun Belt to the SEC is a different level. But Phillip Lee is really exciting. Ken Talley comes in from Michigan State. So you have options, you have depth pieces, but who's going to be those guys that step up and make those plays? Again, replacing Landon Jackson is not going to be a one-to-one thing. It's going to be probably by committee, and this committee feels like it's in a good place. Kind of the same thing with Eric Gregory. You're probably not replacing him one-to-one, but the committee that you do bring back and bring in from the transfer portal gives you exciting talent that could make that happen. That's going to help this defense tremendously, and this defense does need to take a step forward. I think Travis Williams has his work cut out for him up front, but if they're able to do that, then the guys behind them benefit as well. And the linebackers and secondary are probably the strength of this defense besides Cameron Ball, and it's easy to see why. Now, we'll see what kind of scheme this group uses. I think that this staff feels like they got three guys that they feel confident in, and then the depth is kind of up in the air. Steven Dix Jr. and Xavier Sorey are back. Both of them had successful years. Dix had 72 tackles, 3 tackles for loss. Sorey, 99 tackles, 10 tackles for loss. So those are guys that know how to make plays. They know how to get the job done. It's just going to be how much work do they have to do? Because if they have to do too much, then you're in a place that you kind of have to worry about what's going on up front, and maybe they're going to get worn out. Bradley Shaw is another piece. They could find ways to get him more involved in 2 linebacker, 3 linebacker sets. After that, a freshman in Tavian Wallace could take a step. You're looking at Andrew Harris coming in from UCF, another guy that's inexperienced but could take a step into this rotation. So the depth at linebackers may be a question, but you don't have any questions about the starters. You don't necessarily have any concerns about the starters. So you're just maybe either hoping they stay healthy or identifying guys that are going to play in that rotation and make some plays in their absence if needed. The secondary, I think, is in a great place. I truly think that they have good starters, they have good depth, and that's a group that needs to have that because they finished 111th against the pass last year, and that's not going to be sufficient. And like I said, the offense can do a lot of good things, but if the defense isn't up to speed, it's going to be a long year, especially in the SEC with the amount of talent you're going to face and the schedule that we'll talk about in a little bit. You're going to be in for a long year. Now, you do get Julian Neal in the transfer portal. I think that was a really nice addition. That's flying under the radar right now. Opposite of him, I think it's going to be Jaheim Singletary, but you do have other guys in Selman Bridges that could play. Connie Walker comes in from Oklahoma. So there are guys that are going to push him for starting time, and they're probably going to be part of the rotation. I don't think Jaheim Singletary is in pen on the depth chart yet, but he is someone that has exciting talent. When you come from Georgia, people expect big things from you. And I think that he can still do that. It's just that there are guys that are going to push him for time. Larry Worth III is back, 6'4", 225 pounds, very big safety. Caleb Wooden comes in from Auburn. That was a nice addition as well. Another one that kind of flies under the radar. And both will be really solid pieces at the safety position. You could also see Quintavious Scandrett from Eastern Michigan play a role as well in that. Akari Johnson. Then the nickel position. Miguel Mitchell could be that guy. The nickel's kind of up for debate right now. I'm not necessarily sure who's actually going to start there consistently, but Mitchell could play there, could play safety. Maybe you see someone else like Larry Worth move over there. Kind of depends on what Travis Williams wants to do. Jabari Shaw is another guy that could play a role at that position as well. So there are options once again, and that's kind of a theme with some of the positions on this Arkansas Razorbacks team is there are options, but how good are those options? How consistent and how reliable are those options? That's really where you more have questions about what this team will look like and what this team can do in 2025. Now, the schedule is, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, the schedule is rough. I think that is very obvious. This is one of the more difficult schedules in college football, and that doesn't really give anybody peace of mind for what they should expect in 2025. Now you're looking to win more football games, and you can technically do that, but you do need a lot to go right. But again, if this isn't a surprise team, then it's not really unexpected for them to win more football games. That being said, the channel kind of has spoken of where they think, where you all think they're going to finish. First through fourth is not an option. Fifth through eighth, 21% say there. Then the majority say it's going to be a long year. 45% say 9 through 12th. 33% say 13th through 16th. So that's going to be maybe a bowl game, maybe a struggling season where Sam Pittman is gone. And when you look at the schedule, it's kind of easy to see why. Now I have the ceiling at 8-4, so I think that's definitely possible, and we'll talk about why. 4-8 is the floor. That obviously sends Sam Pittman somewhere else, but this is a team that, if they're a surprise team, 8-4 is a possibility. Now Alabama, A&M, and Arkansas State are a 2-0 start. There shouldn't be any questions about that. If there is, you're in for a long year. Going to Ole Miss is tough. I will say that. That is a tough place to play. But if Arkansas is playing at a level, I mean, when you look at what they have, the only real starting positions I have concerns about is probably the defensive line and maybe wide receiver in terms of what are we getting from them. Everything else feels like it's in a good place. And Ole Miss is going through plenty of transition themselves. They have a new quarterback that's stepping up and potentially maybe needs some time. And it's early in the season where anything can happen. So I'm not going to rule that out. I think a lot of people would pick Ole Miss, and Ole Miss probably will be the favorite in that game. But maybe Arkansas finds a way to pull off an upset there. At Memphis is a little bit tricky, but Memphis is going through a transition as well. I don't think that Arkansas has any struggles with that. Hosting Notre Dame. Notre Dame's a team that went to the college football playoff. That's a team that is looking to get back to the national championship. That'll be tough, even though it is at home. Then you get a bye week to kind of regroup and see where you're at. If you're sitting at 3-2, that's not bad. If you're sitting at 4-1, you're feeling pretty good. Then you go to Tennessee, but Tennessee is going to be interesting. That's a team that has a new quarterback, and maybe a quarterback that people aren't respecting as much. Joey Aguilar is, I think, a decent fit for Tennessee, but can he handle life in the SEC? And that's where Arkansas maybe feels like they're at an advantage there. Texas A&M, their quarterback is Marcel Reed. He's going to be really interesting to watch, but it's Texas A&M. That's a really talented group, but they do get that at home. It's not the Jerry World thing anymore. This year it's at home. So this is a nice 3-game stretch at home. You get Texas A&M, Auburn, and Mississippi State at home. So again, when you're looking at the schedule, it is tough, but there are winnable games. Then you get a bye week before a tough stretch to end the year. At LSU and at Texas is absolutely brutal. Those are two teams that are looking to make the college football playoff. Those are two teams that are better than Arkansas right now. So that could be really tough. Then Missouri at home. I don't know what Missouri will actually be. I'm a little optimistic for them, but I also see that there could be a step back for that group as well. So again, this is a tough schedule. It is. You face a number of ranked teams this year, most likely, and you are going to have a tough time winning football games. That being said, there are winnable games on this schedule. I don't think that anybody has to be overly concerned with Sam Pittman's job status right away, because again, you can start off, there is a world where you start 4-0, and I don't think it's unrealistic to think that way. I think that that's a possibility. And Notre Dame is going to be much better. But again, you're starting a new quarterback at Notre Dame. So if you want to look optimistically for Arkansas, you can find ways to pick wins in this schedule and find ways to get to 8-4. You can find the wins. I can promise you that. You can find the wins. We also there are a number of teams every year that come into the season one way or another, where we think, oh, they're going to be good, and then they disappoint. Or in Arkansas's case, I think a lot of people think they're going to finish under 500, and that's an opportunity for them to prove everybody wrong, to win more games than expected. And that means you're going to take down one or two teams that are in that other category. There are teams that are in that other category that are expected to be really successful that are going to take a step back. They're going to lose to Arkansas. we just don't know who that's going to be. Now, if Arkansas isn't that surprise team, then you're looking at that 4-8. But I do think that you can find wins on the schedule. I don't think it's unrealistic or crazy to think that 8-4 is a possibility. Taylor Green is an absolute stud when he's playing at a high level. Being in Petrino's system should benefit him. It will help his draft stock. And this is a team that, if they put everything together, is going to be the surprise team of the SEC.